So I'm going back to heat signature now, and in the last video before my break I kind of summarised the problems I was thinking about and one idea for how to approach them. There's kind of lots of aspects of it, and the one I talked about last time the one thing I had roughly nailed down was it should be more personal, and specifically it was a game about basically conquering territory for the faction you work for. And you were going to choose which faction to work for, kind of each life maybe, or maybe you would restrict you to one faction for a while, then you get to unlock the later ones or whatever. But either way, you'd pick a faction and you would work for them, expanding their territory, and that was kind of your goal, which basically sucked. It just wasn't that interesting. It wasn't that compelling from a story point of view. It makes sense, you have a job and you work with these guys, so you want to further their cause or whatever. It's not that sort of inherently compelling. And also it just felt weird to do. It just was, you conquer one station and then you're like, oh, I just have to conquer loads. And the solution to that was to kind of ramp up on a thing that I haven't put in there at all yet, but was always in the plan. I thought about scrapping it a little while ago, which was personal goals. And each character you play as, one of those unusual things about heat signature is every life is a different person. Every time you die, that person's dead forever and you play as a new person. And these people, I wanted them to be like different people and have different goals in life. And it was going to be like a little sideshow thing of like, oh, and this guy would quite like to make $10,000 or whatever so he can buy his passage out of this galaxy or something. And people were interested in that, and I like that idea quite a lot. I was only going to scrap it back when it just seemed like a step too far. I had so many other goals and things going on that I didn't think it would be viable to do them all. But since the main one has kind of fallen apart, everyone seems way more excited about the idea of like each person having their own thing they want to get done in life. And so making that a bigger part of the game involves basically, they're going to be generated, these personal goals, and that's probably a grandiose term for what I have in mind, which is really just there'll be categories of them. There'll be like rescuing someone, getting revenge for something, maybe stealing like a single important item, definitely stealing a shipment, i.e. of food or medicine, which would involve hijacking a whole ship basically, and one or two other like special case ones. And so those are like the categories, and then like what someone's actual personal goal would be phrased as something like, okay, this is Lisa, her personal goal is to rescue her idiot boyfriend who got captured aboard the X by faction Y, and she's just got to get him back somehow. And all of those different kinds of, so have like a tiny bit of flavour, just like, you know, here's what that person was doing when they were captured, or if you're getting revenge, here's specifically what was done to you, but it would be pretty broad strokes. And you would, all of those different categories all boil down to basically something aboard a ship. Like at some point you're going to break into a ship. That's what the game's about. That's the whole central part of the game. And it's pretty easy actually to kind of, it's pretty natural that all of those things would involve you breaking into a ship. But if you want to assassinate someone, basically you're not going to get them aboard an enemy station, because an enemy station is like infiltrating, you know, not even just an enemy city, but like more like an enemy castle or something. I don't know what their most relatable equivalent is, but it's basically impossible. You're not going to get aboard an enemy station. It's going to have to be a ship. You have to wait for them to fly somewhere and then you get them in transit. And that's a pretty natural way to get anything that's guarded. So that's cool, because that's what the game's about. And that also means we can kind of structure your personal goal. The big worry is that if it's just to board one ship and do one thing, it's only going to take 5 to 10 minutes at most. Boarding a ship can be extremely quick. It can take a bit longer if it's a tricky one, but the actual kind of moment of action is not going to be like it's not going to feel like a campaign or anything. And the personal goals don't need to feel like a campaign, but I want them to be longer than that. And so they need to be multi-stage, and I don't have like super specific rigid plan for what those stages would be, but something like the first thing you do when you pick this character and they have this personal goal is you go to a bar and you meet a contact who you've just heard has got some intel, and that also broad strokes. But the intel could be, if you're trying to rescue someone, it could be what station are they held at. Not what ship are they aboard right now, because they won't be aboard a ship yet. They're being held at some station, they're there. Or if you're trying to get a shipment of medicine because people aboard the station are dying, then it'll be where is a shipment of medicine that's coming soon. So just like where is the objective now? And then the next stage would be, okay, how do we get it out of there? When is it going to leave? When can we ambush it? Where is it going? So like step 1 is literally just talk to somebody. Then step 2 is like, okay, we need to know something about this, go out and get that intel. Like we don't know when the ship's going to leave, but there's another ship that might have that intel aboard and you can onboard that. Maybe. In some cases it might just make more sense to skip that stage. Then the next stage, what I'd really like is a thing where you get intel about your target. So it's like your white whale. It's this thing that, like, your ultimate goal is to get aboard this ship, but you can't do that at all until it leaves port, and once it does leave port, you need to make damn sure you're going to be able to do it. So you need to know what defences does it have. Are the airlocks locked? If they're locked, you're going to need some way past locked doors. If you're assassinating someone, what does he have? Is he armoured? If he's armoured, you're going to need something better than a conventional weapon. What does the ship security look like? Is it swarming with guards? Does it have automated defences? Does it have this or that? And the game will need fleshing out a little bit in terms of like, there aren't that many things in the game right now that need a specific counter to get past them, and I think there should be. And I think it'd be great if your sort of short-term goal is like, let's just get myself good enough that I can take on the ship. Just get the kit I need. That feeling of like a heist movie where you're getting together all the things like, they got this security, so we're going to bypass that this way. They got this problem, we're going to bypass it that way. Plus the kind of RPG thing of like, let's just get good, let's just get some, like a decent silenced pistol, let's get something that maybe protects me or some way to survive if I fuck up, and preparing for this job. And then some kind of mission to draw the ship out, get it out, like either wait until it leaves port or whatever, or make it leave port by baiting it in some way. There's a few different things we can do there. It wouldn't be the same every time. Sometimes you wouldn't need to, it's just going to leave anyway. Sometimes you would, like this guy's never going to leave that station unless, there's a battle going on outside the station, then he might jump in because he's a military commander and he wants to be part of it. I'm wary that like sometimes when I give an example, it sounds quite cool, and I hope they will be cool, but I want to stress there's not going to be like millions of different ways of doing this. There's going to be like 4 or 5, and you're going to get very used to them. It's not going to be like, wow, I didn't know that could happen. They're just categories of things. And then you get aboard the ship, and you execute your plan. You hopefully use the tools that you've acquired to get past the obstacles you knew were going to be here. And if we've done a good job of randomly generating levels and having good, interesting threats, then there might be some surprises, there might be some unexpected difficulties, and then you do it or you don't, you die or you win, and if you succeed and you get out alive, then great. And you can then carry on playing if you like, but you won't get a new personal goal, that character's kind of done, or you can retire them and move on to someone else. So that's the basic structure, and that's a lot more nailed down than it was last time I spoke about it. Then there's the other kind of tricky thing, is, okay, but what's the connection between this character you just played and the next one? And in individual cases we can do stuff like, if you got captured, then the next character might be your brother and they've got to come and rescue you, which is cool. But that's not going to be for every character, right? At some point you're going to play a character who has nothing to do with your previous character. It would be weird if they all did have like a personal relationship. So like, why do you play as just this set of people? What do they all have in common? What's your long-term progress? If you do fail or succeed, is there anything like that you've done to progress in the overall game? And that's the part I didn't have figured out last time, and my idea for that now is that this station you're aboard, there's just one now, and that was figured out a while ago, and you're not really a member of any of the factions. There's 4 factions who kind of dominate the galaxy, and you are aboard the station that's gone independent. It's one that's changed hands like a whole bunch of times, gone back and forth, and they're just sick of the fighting. They don't care about either of these factions. The people who actually lived there aren't necessarily all being evacuated and completely replaced every time it changes hands, because it's happening too often. And so there's a bunch of people who are just like sick of it. They don't care who wins this war. They're just like, this is our home, fuck you guys. They lock down the security controls or whatever. Stations are incredibly well defended if they're being controlled. Like if all their defences are up, no ship can get through their defences. No amount of missiles will ever like wear them down. So like taking over one is this very like rare opportunity of like hacking and disabling their defences somehow. And so if a bunch of citizens decide to lock down a station, they can. And this is the first time that's happened. You are some of those people on that station. And because it's the first independent station, it's become a kind of hub for people who are like desperate or on the edge or really need something done, like why do all the people you play have this one particular thing that they urgently need to do? Well, it's because this is where you come if you've got one particular urgent thing you need to do, because there's people here who have intel that you can't get from your own faction, or if you don't belong to any of the factions won't talk to you, so here's the place where people will talk to you. It's kind of like the first free independent hub. And then, rarely, I don't know, like every X missions, I don't know what X is, whether it's 5 or 10 or 15, or maybe it's time-based. Every now and then, you'll get someone whose personal goal is not to do something directly to help themselves, but it's to liberate another station. So, other stations near you, not all of them, and not necessarily the very closest adjacent ones, but just some, somewhere, not too far away, also want to go independent. They've heard about this, and they're also sick of the fighting for whatever reason. You know, unrest can be a thing that varies from station to station. And they would like to go independent, but they are still stuck under their current regime or whatever. Whether it's the big evil corporation, whether it's the law enforcement of the local planet, whether it's the foundry who kind of built this place, or the glitchers who are a new faction who I might talk about sometime in the future. So then you kind of choose which of those stations you're going to help liberate. You know, there's a bunch who could be liberated. Maybe they're different difficulties, and the way you liberate them isn't totally decided, but it'll involve something about like you've got to shut down the station's defences, right? So you can demilitarize it, so you can get rid of the current occupying force. And one idea I've had for doing that is you've got to hijack a ship, not a ship that's leaving that station, but a ship that's going to that station, that has the proper authorization to go to that station, and you want to get aboard it and like plant a virus on its computer and then just leave and make sure no one knows you're ever there, so that it still docks and they don't know there's any security problems, and then when it docks, that virus, you know, spreads and disables their defenses. Maybe that's the only way it ever happens, maybe that's just one of several ways, I don't know. But that would be a cool, that neatly fits into the personal goal system already, right? Whatever that ship is that's going there, you can have the same sequence of, okay, where is that ship? What does it have aboard it? How do I get aboard it? When is it leaving? That kind of thing. And so in that way, you would gradually progress throughout the galaxy. You start with this one station, and it's not that you can't get to the rest of the galaxy, but I think I'm going to introduce limited fuel, which is a thing I've toyed with for a long time. I like the idea of it, like the feel of like running out of fuel and needing to stop and restock. But it also gives this natural thing of like, if that's your only station, then you can't go too far from it without having to refuel. And I think I'm going to let you board ships and go, when you board a ship, take their fuel canisters and bring them back to your ship and refuel that way. But it might be that if you go too far from your territory, maybe you can't board those ships, or I don't know if you'll always be able to just keep on boarding ships to refuel and go as far as you like. Maybe that's fine because that's a difficult journey, right? If you want to go really far away, the fact that you have to keep doing that becomes a source of friction and make going a long way feel like a big deal. And that's all I want really. Like, it's just like, right now you can just cross the whole galaxy trivially, you can autopilot there, you can fast forward. It's absurdly generous in how fast you can travel across the galaxy. And that means it doesn't have much of a sense of kind of distance. There's no part of the galaxy that feels really far away, and I'd like to fix that. And so then if you're unlocking these other stations that are, you know, a decent distance from your current one, you're sort of getting access to that part of the galaxy as well. Now you can refuel at this other friendly station because they're both independent, and progress in that way. And then also, these stations would help to unlock technologies. So I've talked before about the invention system, which is another thing I haven't made yet, where it's part of the game's persistent progress. So as you're flying around the galaxy, you find and board ships, you find loot, but the total set of different things you can find right at the start of the game might be quite basic. It might just be, there aren't any like electrified katanas in this world. There's guns, and there's some rapid fire guns, and there's some shotguns. Maybe there's no perfectly silent weapon yet. Or maybe there's no non-lethal guns, or no non-lethal grenades or something. And those are things that are kind of invented over the course of the game. And if your station has access to that kind of technology, let's say the station that went independent was an off-world station. Off-world security are the faction that are totally non-lethal. They don't want to kill anyone. They are law enforcement for the nearest planet, and all their guns would be like non-lethal type things, a bit like the PEPS gun in Deus Ex Human Revolution. And like someone at their station, or at their station exists the the technology or like some piece of plan or something that means it's possible to invent a non-lethal grenade, like a concussion grenade that knocks everyone out, or like maybe a gas grenade or something. But you don't have the parts, and so possibly even as someone's personal goal, you could go out into the world and get those parts and then invent that thing. And then after it's invented, the shop on your station would always sell it, and also it's just out there to be found in the loot of the world forever for all your characters for the future. And so then, like, what you can invent depends on whose station this was before it went independent. So if it's off-world, it'll have some non-lethal tech. If you conquer another off-world station, you get access to more advanced non-lethal tech. It's possible to invent more advanced non-lethal tech. If you would instead go for a Shiga station and liberate that, you would probably get access to like cooler silenced weapons, or maybe some really nasty grenade types that just murder everybody, because there's Shiga all about assassination. Oh, I'm not calling them Shiga anymore, I'm calling them Sovereign. So Sovereign all about, they get things done by assassination. They have loads of really high level operatives with just like silenced weapons and swords and stuff, and they don't care about killing people. And so you might want to intentionally liberate one of their stations to kind of, because that's the kind of tech you want to unlock in your game. And then you'd make your way across the galaxy in that fashion if you wish. But importantly, that's now just something you can do because you want to. Like, you can, when there is that character whose personal goal is to liberate another station, you don't have to pick him. He's one of like 3 or 4 or 5 choices. And you can just leave him where he is and just play someone else. And you don't have to conquer that station. It's not your objective to conquer the galaxy. You're not trying to liberate every station. Maybe there's some stations that will never be liberated. In fact, that probably will be the case, because it would be boring if you did liberate them all. And so it becomes like an opportunity, and it becomes a fun thing to like, oh, I really want that technology, so I'm going to unlock this station. Or there might be other rewards, like this station just sells something really good already, like something that's already invented, but it's hard to get access to normally. They have a shop that sells it. So like long-term perks like that. And I think that solves the problem of like territory conquest. Territory conquest is kind of boring in itself. So yeah, that was the missing piece last time, the biggest missing piece, and I think that works. I'm undecided yet as to whether the sort of notion of the galaxy being a place where it's really hard to get from one side to the other, whether that needs more, whether there should be big danger zones around every station or something like that. That's fairly easy to put in if it turns out it does need that, so I don't need that to be a core part of the plan. And then there are a couple other things. My laptop has super long battery and I don't have them all memorised. I think these characters will have individual like traits that make them quite different. So yeah, sometimes the guy who needs to rescue his brother, sometimes he is a highly trained combat operative, and that's great, and so you have a bunch of perks about that. But it's also possible that he's just like a doctor and he doesn't really want to do this, and he's no good with guns, and he's not actually that strong in close combat. So maybe he can't use two-handed close combat weapons, or I want you to have this dash when you attack someone with a melee weapon, like you close the distance to them really rapidly and you sort of automatically lock onto them, so you just smack them really quickly. And maybe that's the thing you only get if you're actually a trained fighter. Stuff like that would be really cool. In terms of like the onboard stuff, I've said many times that needs improving. I think the route I'm going on that is that I want that to be little clusters of enemies rather than just sort of individual enemies roaming around. So it's always like, this is a hub place I've got to get through, and there's like 5 guys there. And if you are that combat character with a cool dash and you've got really good... another thing I want to talk about onboard combat is slow-mo rather than being a button you hold down. I think when you take someone out, it goes into slow-mo for like a couple of seconds and then slowly ramps back up to normal speed. And so if you can chain together takedowns, then you can do it all in slow-mo and have all the time you like to like switch between weapons and do cool fancy stuff. But if you're not a fighter, you probably won't have that slow-mo so much. Maybe it'll be reduced slow-mo, or maybe you won't get any at all. If you're just not a combat guy, then you just taking that first guy out doesn't give you a huge rush of bloodlust and adrenaline that lets you automatically take out 5 more guys in a second. You just take that one guy out and the rest of the next one shoots you. So what I want is like, those clusters mean that if you are brilliant at combat and you want to go the combat route and just take them all out, then there's this cool slow-mo way of doing that. But if either you can't, or you don't want to for playstyle reasons, or you have the time to be super methodical about it, then you kind of stalk them and you wait for individual ones to wander off for a second, and then you silently take them out and you do the proper like full stealth thing where they never know you're there, no one ever sees you before they're taken out. I think maybe that's it. My laptop shut down, so if there is any more to the plan, I don't know what it is anymore. So yeah, I think that's roughly the kind of bare bones. I want to do that interior stuff first, I think. I want the like melee improvements where you dash to your target and like really smack them out of the way. That might be the first thing I do. Reworking that slow-mo system to suit it would be great. And then that kind of gives me things to play with when I come to giving characters different traits and stuff. And then when I go to Stugan, which I'm going to in like 2 weeks now, we're going to Sweden for 7 weeks to stay in cabin with a whole load of other indie developers and work on Heatsig. And there will, I think, be the structure stuff, the personal goals and basically how those work and all the different stages of them. So that's the plan.